I'm wearing the same fucking shirt.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another college football rankings live reaction. Week 5.
Nailed it.
The committee has spoken. Your official top 10. Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Florida State are your top 4 currently. You've got Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Bama, Missouri, and Penn State. Your initial reactions, Chris, to all this?
So I have several.
Okay.
One, good to see you a day early this week. Thank you for filling in. I'm glad we get to finally do this. Several reactions. I'll start with Bama because I'm a Bama guy.
You are a Bama guy.
It's the longest I've seen this team and program win consistently and not move up at all. And I'm not saying they should. I'm not saying they should be anywhere higher at all. It's just very odd to see. Just kind of going through my other takeaways. Kind of surprised that Ohio State is still at 6. I'm not even sure if they don't deserve to be. I would have them below Texas and Bama though, because here's the thing: there's no avenue for Ohio State to get in. There's just not, like, at all. There's no possible way for them to get in.
A lot of bad stuff would have to happen.
Nothing could happen for them to get in. Nothing.
Well, what if Florida State loses to Louisville, Oregon loses to Washington, Texas loses to Oklahoma State, and Bama loses to Georgia?
One thing could happen for them to get in. Did not see that one coming. So that was good. Okay. But like for the most part, there's no actually that's not even that far fetched, is it?
No, it's really not. Actually, I mean, I don't see Oklahoma State beating Texas, but you never know.
Okay, so maybe it does make more sense. I will say this: I just think that Ohio State should be lower than Texas and Bama. I'm surprised they're not. I have no problem with 9 and 10. 10 is a little bit weird, but it's whatever.
Impressed with Penn State at all this year.
There's no team that gets like celebrated more for close losses or like good losses than Penn State. It's what their entire current program is built off of. Their entire current program. Now let's just start from the beginning. They got number 1 right.
Yeah, I thought there was a potential that they would move Michigan up just because they beat the number 2 team.
Yeah.
But I still think Georgia's better than Michigan, so I think they did get it right as well.
They also have a much better resume. Here's the thing. You know what? Fuck it. We'll just get right into it because this is what I'm most confused about. Okay, this is what I'm most confused about. I said this in a meeting we had on STS, and also welcome in everybody. I hope everyone's having a great night. I said this in a meeting with STS before the first ranking came out, and I said, seriously, I was like, I don't know the answer to this. I'm ignorant to what the answer is. Someone please help me out. When they are in the committee room, like the committee that is having these meetings, like the 12 people in this room or whatever it is, are they using the metrics and analytics and numbers from ESPN FPI? Because I trust that the 12, however many, 13 committee members are going to make the right decision. That's what they told us they were going to do, and I trusted the vaccine too. So like I can be a sheep. Just let me know. Like I'll put my trust in you. Totally fine. I believed in Santa twice, Tyler. That's twice too many. So I can believe in you. But that being said, if we're going to use those numbers as the metrics for how we're grading teams, I have some concerns and I have some questions. And it comes out tonight, and maybe they said earlier in the year too, I don't know. But all the numbers they were using in defense of their rankings and the strength of schedule, strength of record, and all that kind of stuff, they were all from ESPN FPI. Now, let's just start with the strength of schedule numbers from ESPN FPI, which is where I think, like, I'm not even going to get into the FPI rankings because they still currently have Ohio State at number 1, which is insane behavior. Fun fact, they also had Bama ranked ahead of LSU in 2019 for 2 straight weeks after LSU beat Bama in Bama. But that's neither here nor there. Strength of schedule.
Ranked as like the number 8 team going into one of the seasons. Remember that?
Yeah, they did. They did. Okay, strength of schedule. Michigan, 36th. Georgia, 59th. Now, Michigan was ranked 111th in their strength of schedule before week 12.
Well, when
they
you
beat
play the
11.
number one FBI team.
Right. They beat Ohio State, they beat Penn State, and that vaulted them all the way to number 36. Where I'm confused about is Georgia being at 59, because you could say whatever you wanted to in the month of September and halfway through October that Georgia really hadn't played anybody. I made that case because they hadn't played anybody, and the numbers showed that. Then they kept playing the schedule. They beat Kentucky like a drum. They beat Florida, who I know didn't make a bowl, but at the time 5-2, beat them like a drum. Then you went to November and you beat the brakes off of Tennessee, you beat the brakes off Mizzou, and you beat the brakes off of Ole Miss.
I wouldn't
So
say
tell me,
I wouldn't say they beat the brakes off Missouri. 30-21.
that's what I meant. Yeah, you're right. You're very right. But what I am saying is, like, how is that at 59? Matt Blaska, so I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't agree or disagree with what you're saying, like about the FPI. There's got to be something that goes into it. It does feel like a little bit of inherent bias or eye test or something that's going into it. But why are these the numbers that we're using for the committee? Because that's where it doesn't add up. And that's where it worries me. Because if we're saying that Georgia right now has played the 59th ranked strength of schedule in the country, I don't buy that for a second. And if we are still saying that all that's real, then explain to me how 11-1 Texas, who went on the road in Tuscaloosa and beat Bama by 10 points in their house and has only lost one game in the final 15 seconds on a neutral field to their rival, played the 13th ranked strength of schedule in the country, how are they at 7?
Yeah, and they made a good point when they were talking to Boo Corrigan on the show. They said, okay, let's just look at Texas and Oregon. Texas's strength of schedule is much better than Oregon's, and they do have a common opponent, Texas Tech. Texas beat Texas Tech by 50.
57-7.
And Oregon beat them by 1 score.
They beat them by 8, and that's because they got it was 31-30, and they got a fumble in the last, 30 seconds of the game and ran it back for a touchdown.
One of the craziest covers ever, by the way.
Very true.
I was on the right side of that.
You were.
Yeah. Yeah, that one doesn't make too much sense. I personally, I'd love to see Oregon and Texas play head-to-head. I think that'd be a fantastic game. You made mention on Twitter that you would be very angry if Georgia got to play Florida State with a backup quarterback.
I'm not ready to get to this yet. But I will say,
I want to tell you that if what we think is going to happen and the spread very much favors Oregon to beat Washington, then I think what will happen if Florida State wins is Florida State will move to 3 and play Michigan, and Oregon will be 4 to play Georgia.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
I will say this. Okay, so before we get into that hypothetical, here's the other part. I know that we Saturday Football Uncensored. I hope you guys check out the podcast. We got a live show every Sunday. We have new episodes come out every Wednesday night, Thursday morning.
Go like this video, by the way, and if you're not subscribed to the YouTube page, please do it.
Do it, please. But here's the thing. So I think that if you look at this, if you look at this, I've kind of lost my train of thought now. What was it? It was important. Oh, okay. So we cover the entire country, okay? With our podcast. But I know that traditionally with SDS, it is a SEC first site, podcast, all this stuff. Let's talk about the SEC for a second, because here's the dangerous game that the committee is really playing. I said this a couple weeks ago, and I said it before the season, and I said it very early on. There's a chance that the SEC gets left out. There's a doomsday scenario that's not even that doomsday, where Bama and Georgia could both be at 1 loss, and somebody gets left out of the college football playoff. You saw it coming a mile away with the Pac-12 and how good their resurgence has been. You only needed one guy. You only needed one other conference or one team from the other conferences, like Texas and Florida State, and then you had everything that happened in the Big Ten. This is not that crazy of a scenario for the SEC to get left out. So if Bama beats Georgia, which tune into the podcast tomorrow if you think that if you want to hear our predictions on it. But if Bama beats Georgia, you're telling me that Bama gets left out. They're gonna pass Ohio State, right? So Michigan's gonna beat Iowa. They're gonna win that game 27-5.
Yep,
guaranteed. Okay,
5 would be good for Iowa.
It would be very good for Iowa. Let's say that it's chalk with Oregon beating Washington. So now Washington's out. So you have Michigan and Oregon. Georgia loses to Bama.
Yeah.
Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Florida State doesn't win, because I think if they win, they're in. You cannot keep an undefeated Power 5 team out. And then Texas, right? So
Texas
tell me
wins.
that Texas wins. So
Okay.
now you have Michigan and Oregon are both in. You have losses from three of the top four, 1, 3, and 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
Georgia, Washington, Florida State all lose. Ohio State's done. They're not getting back in. Texas I would assume, get in because they're a Big 12 like champion. So now you're looking at Bama, and you're assuming that Bama's going to get in. Oregon's in.
No, I wouldn't assume that.
You're not going to put Georgia ahead of them.
If Florida State loses, yes. I
Yes.
could. Yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying is, so Oregon is in, Michigan's in, Texas is in, and now you've got 3 spots left with Georgia, Florida State, Ohio. I'm sorry, 1 spot left with Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, and Bama.
Yeah. I mean,
Ohio State's done. I mean, not Texas. Bama. Are you basically what I'm trying to say is, are you telling me that Georgia, who's just won 29 straight games, like you put them in a position, if you're the committee, that if they lose, they're out?
Yeah, I agree. I had this conversation at work today, and my business partner was arguing that Georgia's in no matter what.
No.
And I said, no, if Bama beats Georgia, we've already seen it here in the rankings. Michigan was 2. They lost. I'm sorry, Ohio State was 2. Michigan beat them, and they dropped 4 spots out, 2 spots out from being in the playoff. If Georgia loses to Alabama this weekend and Michigan wins, Oregon or Washington, one of them will be in, and Florida State wins, you cannot put Georgia. Maybe you could convince me that Georgia should be in over Oregon, but if Oregon beats Washington and they win the Pac-12, they're in.
Right.
So
I'm so confused. I'm so confused as to how, and again, I don't think this is how it's going to play out. I think that those top 2 teams are favored for a reason and favored by a lot for a reason. I'm just very confused as to what the committee thinks they're going to be able to talk their way out of. Because if you're telling me that you put Georgia in a scenario where they're on the chopping block and they have just won 20, like think about this. Think about this nightmare scenario. What if this plays out almost how it always plays out with these 2 teams, where Bama wins on like a last second play and it's like an overtime game. And now you're sitting there like, well, man, they're 12-0 in the regular season. They haven't lost a game in regulation. Like they lost by 3 in overtime to number 8. Are you dropping them out of the top 4? Like, because you have to put Bama ahead of them because they just beat them.
Right.
It's so confusing to me, like the things that we're kind of putting up for one team. And again, this is why I think that Ohio State, this is the most frustrating thing for me, is because Ohio State is out. Ohio State is out, regardless of the scenario you said earlier. And I don't know how that we still have 180 current viewers, because the way I described that entire doomsday scenario was almost illiterate at best. So thank you to everyone that's watching. Yeah. Very tough to follow. But I'm saying, Ohio State, just get them out of there. Everything behind 8, they're done. I'm very confused as to the way they've set this up, because they have put themselves in a very, very bad spot if chaos does unfold.
I agree in the chat. Harris J says, the way I see it, Alabama is the biggest Louisville fan ever. Yeah. I think we're in a bad spot right now where you're rooting against Florida State this weekend.
I am. Sorry. I want my team to, but here's also, I mean, like, the hay will be in the barn by the time y'all kick off for Bama.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
I'll probably be at your place because I'm sure at the wedding shower I'm going to be at, I'll probably have already been kicked out.
Yeah. Look, Brett McMurphy put this up today. Number 7 Texas and number 8 Bama. Are they done? Because no team ranked lower than number 6 with 1 week to go has ever made the playoff.
And again, so let's shift our focus here for a second, because I still think this too. I don't think Bama is good enough to make the playoff. I don't think they beat Georgia. Spoiler alert for the podcast tomorrow. I don't know how much I'll have to drink or what kind of ray of emotions I'll have talk myself into. But as of right now, I'm picking Georgia. But if you're Texas and you've got the 13th ranked strength of schedule, and the common opponent thing with Oregon is insane. And here's another thing too. They're getting punished. And Boo Corrigan said this. Boo Corrigan made the point. He goes, yeah, so, Oregon's just dominated so many teams. How do you look at this Texas team and think like, man, they went 11-1, played almost a quarter of their season without their starting quarterback. and beat number 8. They still have one of the best wins on any resume in the country, and it was in a true road game. Like, so I don't understand how you look at Texas and you still have them at 7. I never thought I would see a situation like, I don't want to hear anything else about, like, how this is all for theater, blah blah, because it's concerning to me, and I don't care how this sounds. It's concerning to me that I look at this logo, this blue blood Texas Horns logo, and they are sitting there seemingly like locked in like a log jam behind Ohio State and Oregon when they have the same amount of losses and a better win than either of them. I mean, let's not forget Oregon's best win still. Well, I guess now now their best win is a 4-loss Utah or a 4-loss Oregon State.
Yeah.
And by the way, Utah was without their starting quarterback, and Oregon State found out the night before their head coach was leaving to go to Michigan State.
All fair points, but if they beat Washington in the Pac-12 championship, I mean, to me, I think there's an argument to be had between Texas and Bama being above Ohio State.
Yeah.
But really, that's everything else to me seems pretty fair. And I mean, I know there's people in the chat that are saying, sorry, Florida State's out because they have a backup. Look, you can't. No, I just don't think you can do it because it's a team game. It's not. I get that Florida State is worse with their backup. Everyone would be. But you just went on the road in the Swamp, which is not easy to do. I don't care how bad Florida is on defense. Night game, rivalry game. If you look at all these big rivalry games, Florida State was the only one that covered the spread. So you could talk about how Florida State's going to get slaughtered if they get in. And I don't know if that's the case or not. I saw a hypothetical line would be Georgia by 14 over Florida State and Michigan by 8 over Washington.
So here's the thing. So if Michigan's favored by 8 over Washington and Oregon's favored by 9.5.
Yeah, no, that would be to me, if you're a Georgia fan, I think that you want Florida State to win, and then you want Oregon or Washington to beat Oregon.
Yeah.
Because I think the nightmare scenario for Georgia is Florida State wins, Oregon beats Washington, Oregon moves to 4, and you have to play Oregon in the first round.
Yeah.
You'd much rather play Florida State, obviously, with the backup quarterback. So I feel like that might be the worst case scenario for Georgia is Florida State and Oregon both winning.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing too. Somebody brought this up in the chat. Jerome at Cuff says this weekend will clear up everything. Well, yeah, it's the last weekend, so they have to.
I mean, things will be clear by Sunday at noon.
We might not like it though. I will say that, but you're not wrong by any means. Georgia fears no one.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I get it. I wouldn't be scared of anyone if I was a Georgia fan either.
No. Let's backtrack here for a second. If you're the team, you fear no one. If you're the team, you don't fear it. Like you go line up against the Eagles tomorrow, and it looks maybe like an inner squad from 2 years ago. You don't fear anybody. If you're a fan, I don't want to hear a single word about this bullshit about we don't fear anybody. Yeah, as soon as those doors open on Saturday in that house of horrors you're walking into, you absolutely will have some level of fear because you're going to stand up and walk in and see all this crimson and white and red and black, and you're going to think, oh my God, in that corner, that's where Tua broke our hearts in 2017. Oh my God, in that corner, that's where his backup came in and broke our hearts the following year. Oh my God, in that corner, that's where they beat us by and scored more points in one quarter than we've given up all season. You're going to have some fear put in you. Just know that. Anyway, the other part of it's this, like somebody said Georgia's in no matter what. Here's the thing. I think they should be. I think they should be. But think about this. If Michigan wins, Washington wins, and Florida State wins, okay? So those three are undefeated. They're in. And Georgia loses, Texas wins, and Bama wins. Oh, this is already the scenario I already did. Georgia's not in because they've already lost. They honestly might drop to 6 or 7 because in that scenario, they would have lost to Bama. You can't be ranked ahead of them. And then Texas would I don't know what happens in that scenario, but like there's a
Texas would have beat the team that Georgia lost to, and they would have won the conference.
Exactly. So I'm just saying it's not that far-fetched. It's crazy to think about, like, and fathom. It really is. Like in the same way that it's crazy to think the SEC could be left out. Now, real quick, before we what do you call it? Finish this up. We can talk about this on the podcast tomorrow too, but it's just something I was just talking about with Chris Gordy, and I think it's really interesting. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory, but big picture here, Tyler, you are in a very, very weird spot where if something happens and the committee just decides to reward anything but what happened on the field, if they let Bama jump Texas with similar records and that's egregious, if you take off Florida State, right? If you let anything factor into what happens in your rankings outside of prioritizing what happened on the field, you're setting a very, very dangerous precedent for all of college football, because next year, when you look at teams adding in, or conferences adding in, like the SEC adding in Texas and Oklahoma, again, why on earth, if the SEC loses two, if neither one of these teams somehow like make the top four in that scenario, like in some crazy scenario, which could happen, why on earth are you ever under the impression that you think you could tell that conference moving forward, hey, I need you to schedule more difficult games and I need you to go play a 9-game conference schedule? No, because you just showed us last year there's no reason to do that. There's no reason for Bama to schedule Texas earlier in the year. There's no reason for anyone to, like, Clemson or Michigan played no one the entire season and skated through until like playing somebody in 2 of the last 3 weeks. Why on earth would anyone in the SEC go out of their way to schedule anyone difficult non-con or ever go to a 9-game conference schedule? There's no reason to. There's no, even with the 12-team playoff, there's just no reason to.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, if Florida State goes undefeated and you leave them out, you're also telling them, hey, we get that you went out and scheduled LSU out of conference and you also play Florida out of conference every year. We don't really care because LSU, they lost a few games. We don't care that you went on the road against Clemson, where only 3 teams in the past 10 years have won. No other team this year, even in their worst year where they're still ranked. We don't really care about that because, we thought that Oregon, with their worse or equal strength of schedule, just looks better.
Right.
So what we do know, our smart person in the chat, it will get cleared up this weekend. I think they're right. I think they're right on that.
Man, it's crazy. It's just I honestly, usually I feel like I'm the guy that, like, obviously overreacts to everything, but like I also this has just been a crazy day. Like I thought the rankings, I just am surprised that Ohio State's still up there. And then I'm still also very shocked that we'll talk about this tomorrow on the pod. Don't make sure you tune in. We appreciate everybody watching this as well. It's been a lot of fun, as it always is. The fact that we're sitting here having to talk about, gather notes for tomorrow's pod about Bobby Petrino returning to Arkansas is insane to me.
Can't wait for that segment tomorrow. And if you guys don't listen to the podcast, Saturday Football Uncensored, you can find it here on YouTube as well as traditional spots, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. We will be talking about Bobby Petrino.
Yeah.
Back in the saddle at Arkansas. I hope he just walks in at the press conference with just a little neck brace. Something small,
Oh, yeah. All right, guys. We will see you tomorrow night.
Not live tomorrow. We have to record it pretty late, and we usually just go live on Sundays.
Yeah.
So a lot to be. I mean, look. Let me go through the spreads real quick of these big games. Washington 9.5-point underdog.
Michigan's like what? Like 13.5.
Texas 14.5. Bama is 5.5-point underdog. Iowa is a 23-point underdog, and Florida State is a 2.5-point favorite. So some of these games, based on the spread, seem like locks. Some of them are going to be very close. That SEC championship game and that ACC championship game are going to determine a lot. And so we'll see. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, same.
All right, guys. Well, we appreciate you tuning in. Go to SaturdayDownSouth.com if you want to get coverage of all these games, because as Chris said before, Saturday Down South has traditionally been an SEC website, but we've opened up to all the conferences now, and we have coverage for every conference, every team. And we will be recording our pod, Saturday Football Uncensored, brought to you by Saturday Down South, tomorrow for your listening pleasure on Wednesday night, Thursday morning. For Chris, I'm Tyler. Going to be a fun week. We'll see you later.